Here we go again, gang. It's that Height Drop bonus episode. Special bonus guest for you guys this week. Episode 44, I think we're at. And first of all, thank you to our guests, Matt Bernstein and Zack Finer. These are the founders of the Boulder Movement Collective, which is a school that is teaching a generalist movement approach, a holistic kind of movement lifestyle to students out here in Boulder, Colorado. And if you guys have heard of Ido Portal, if you haven't, I'm going to put his information in the description so you guys can kind of see what we're alluding to or talking about in this episode. If you want to get, a lot of people probably already know, but if you want to get more well-versed on it before listening, or if you're more curious about this stuff after listening, you could just kind of see, I'll let it speak for itself, like what his movement style kind of looks like and the philosophies and thinking that go with it. So all that information is going to be in the description. Obviously, our guests and their school there, and as well, especially if you're in the Colorado area or near enough to it that you can want to check it out. I definitely encourage it. I've been working with these guys for about a year, and I mentioned this in the episode, but it's given me a lot more depth into my knowledge of what and how I understand, my own body and my own movement practice, if you want to call it. That's kind of what they refer to it as, or your own training is like often what the word we use here in parkour jargon. But it's we talk a lot about kind of the differences between their approach is a generalist approach and how that compares to specializing in something. And I think it's a really fascinating topic because parkour, and even though it is a more specialized thing than what they're doing, it is also more general and generalist in its approach to movement and fitness than, a lot of things that have come before it. And it's kind of a fascinating time. We don't know maybe if this is like a trend that we're seeing, like why do these things why have they popped up historically in the times in this current time? Is it relating to something else? Who knows? We're having fun though. These are fun guys. It is a great episode. I really appreciate you guys joining us, listening. This is fun to bring some stuff that's very near to what we do, but also very, very different. And I hope you guys are going to get a lot out of this one. I did. It was really fun talking with these guys, and I encourage you guys to check out what they have to offer. And here they are, Matt Bernstein and Zack Finer. Let's do it. It's not the first time it's actually come up on the podcast,
because of mustache moving.
Well, no one has had a mustache quite so impressive as the one you're rocking.
Thank you.
Right now, and
he gets one compliment and he keeps it.
But
it's growing on me.
My wife was the one compliment. It's important.
Fair play.
Yeah,
and it goes really well with all of the hats that he owns. He has his fireman's helmet.
Oh, yeah.
That's his cowboy hat.
Yeah, I'm like
Patagonia hat. It works. Mustache is just an accessory for hats. That's what we realized.
Well, it's weird that they came back. It's literally not been a thing since my dad had a mustache and I was a little kid.
I could have guessed, based on how you've talked about your dad, I could have guessed your dad had a mustache.
My whole life. You know what's odd, though? He isn't rocking it anymore.
It's time for me to shave it then.
No. I don't know why he doesn't bring it back. Like now's the perfect time.
It's like a hairy baton that you pass on from one generation to the next.
Yeah, maybe he's waiting for me to pick up the baton now. He's like, come on. I've been carrying this torch for too long.
The mustache thing is kind of a little annoying, though. Like, I shaved it as a joke to upset my wife.
She liked it. And now everybody has a mustache. I don't.
Yeah, but
you could.
You have a nice beard.
If I have a mustache, I will be single. She will leave me.
We shouldn't get into that.
Well,
you guys will never leave me.
I don't want you to break up. We'll never leave you.
I really couldn't even grow one if I tried. That's my biggest issue.
You have one.
I've got, but it's not. Look at that. Look at that. That's the full dad stash.
Because he was a fireman.
It's because you're a true.
I'm a father.
You're a father.
At a certain point, just like there's dad strength, and it helped me to grow a mustache. It's a real thing.
You can lift burning cars off of his kids.
What else changes when you enter into that fatherhood?
Oh my God, you are fatigued 24 hours a day. You drink at least 2 full Mr. Coffees a day. Like the Mr. Coffee drip coffee. 2 of them a day, out of the container. You don't even pour it into a cup. And And the best thing is you get to like wrestle with kids all day, and
his kids are. And I think your boys are easy.
It's
man.
legal.
They're cool kids.
Yeah, they're super cool.
To fight your own children.
Yeah, you can legally like stress out kids to make them more resilient. Hopefully, that's what I do.
That's what you do. Hey, that is interesting. There's a different philosophy. Like I'm sure that's something that's come through in the classes. You talk about your kids a lot, obviously. What do you look at your parenting? How is it different than people that aren't like movement focused?
Yeah, I mean that's the easiest thing. Like when I look at other parents, I don't want to say it stresses me out. I just I think I'm doing the best I can do, but a lot of the times parents are going to be trying to set their kids up for success in a way that actually I think sets them up for failure more so. Like they're freaked out that they're going to fall off of everything. It's like the kid, if he falls off of something that's like 6 inches high, it's cool. He's all good. Like these guys, Zach and everybody who comes over, they're constantly playing with the kids. It's like, it's a madhouse.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, especially like it's whenever like I used to live next door to Matt, and we go to the park down the street, and like at the time Jack wasn't even 2, and he's like climbing the playground, and like other parents are like, I mean, you literally get it. It's like helicopter parenting. Like they're literally on top of their kid, like won't let them leave the sandbox area, and Jack's like, yeah. And
they should be safe.
Jack's doing like V3s now, right?
Yeah.
V3.
They should be safe. That's one thing I will say is like he's Jack, the oldest guy. He spends a lot of time up on like the kitchen counter, and it's sketchy, but it's like he's very confident in it. And we always are like, turn around, look at the edge. It's right there. We're not stupid with it, but there's definitely like there's a mega coddling thing going on.
Yeah.
That's like kind of offensive to being a human being, you know? Like it's rough.
I'm glad I didn't grow up. I mean, I barely caught the tail end of freedom in childhood, I feel like.
Yeah, how old are you?
29.
Yeah.
So, I remember running around town, and I was on my bike. I was doing whatever, parents unknowing for hours at a time what I was doing. Stink bombs, yeah. Throwing snowballs at cars. Causing a ruckus, dude. I was
stink bomb ruckus.
I mean, almost maybe too much. I got into lots of trouble. Almost got addicted to getting into trouble for some parts of my adolescence there, but partially because I was being smothered in one way. I think.
Yeah.
I had one dad who was crazy. Like he's the wildness. Like part of where I get with my interest in parkour and doing stuff. He was a climber, and my mom she wasn't a helicopter parent. She was, I think, pretty steady, but because she was more involved, like that's who I could rebel against or whatever.
Yeah, and it's like if you got one guy, your dad pushing it on one side of the spectrum. If your mom's pretty mellow, she's gonna seem like a hard ass.
Yeah,
even though she probably was not. But if you have a crazy dad who's like teaching you how to ride bikes off of jumps and stuff, then
Yeah, I mean,
or whatever.
What is so your kid's on the counter? Are you scared he's gonna get into something like parkour?
No, I'm excited. I mean, when it's kind of a fun thing being like here in the hub, like the Mecca. Yeah. It's pretty easy to be like, oh, cool. Like you're going to grow up in this world, and like you can go to Apex, you can go to the university, and like all these videos that you're posting. It's like, oh, cool. I know exactly where that is. Like, let's go bring 4-year-old Jack over there. And I'm not afraid. I look forward to him being better than me at all of this stuff. And look, if he's not into it, at least when he's 8, and if he's like, I just want to write poetry and paint, cool, do what you want to do, but at least we exposed him to it, so he's got those tools.
He's gonna grow up in a world where like people doing one-arm handstands and acrobatics is like not interesting to him at all. It's just gonna be like the norm.
Yeah,
like I think it'll be interesting for him to realize one day that that's not what everybody's dad can do.
Yeah.
Like you hear these stories about like kids who have like famous parents, and like one day they realize like, oh, like, my dad who's like, a Beatle was famous or something like that. It just like, and other people's parents aren't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel that. I mean, what was that realization? Did you guys have that about your parents? I feel like everyone has that almost about one unique thing that, unless for me, it was my dad. I thought my dad wasn't a wild person.
Yeah.
I just thought everyone was like that. And then I realized as I got older, I was like, oh, like, it's worked to my advantage in parkour because I don't care about trespassing or the rules in general because my dad never did.
Don't trespass.
So that's
kids.
not great, but it also has, again, played into my advantage where I just generally have I know I'm not hurting anybody, so I have a few qualms with going onto rooftops unapproved too.
It's light trespassing.
Just a little.
It's like fishing.
It's just a little exploration, you know? It's a little exploration.
Yeah, it's light. Sorry, police.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess like my dad climbed a lot. He was a climber too. He did martial arts. We always did like the weird sports. That's the thing. That was like I never threw a ball with my dad. We threw frisbee. So like Matt's like my ball tossing dad. Like, he taught me how to throw a ball.
Taught him how to toss balls.
Yeah,
nice.
Pretty good, real good. But he climbed. We did martial arts and stuff like that. Like we were very much like the outdoors, like camping, kind of almost like bushcraft type stuff. Like he was really into that. I don't know. Like I don't know if I had that kind of same realization, but it's just definitely like at a certain point you realize like not everybody gets to go and do all the things I got to do. I grew up in like kind of the mountains of Washington, so had a lot of access to the outdoors, and that was where I think I was most lucky. In terms of growing up, is like skiing, being outside, being in kind of the nature helped a lot.
Yeah, same. I think growing up out here. Is that how did you, I actually don't know how either of you guys got involved with the movement, Ido Portal's teachings and obviously you guys are running the mentorship here in Boulder. Hope I'm saying that right.
So,
there's a lot of different things you can explain.
So we're a part of Ido's mentorship, but we run a facility here. Like you come and you come to classes. So we were the first facility running in the States. Now there's a few, but we both met Ido around the same time. Like I met Ido 2011. I think you met him 2012. And we kind of it's similar backgrounds. Like we were both involved early on in CrossFit. And liked a lot of what was happening there, but the culture started to change very much underneath us, especially when like the competition side of it got
You guys
big.
here in Boulder?
I was in Israel and Matt was.
I started in Steamboat and then was in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we were at different kind of corners of the world, and then I was in Seattle for a bit. But I think we both kind of saw videos of Ido and ended up working with him pretty early. And what was cool, for me is like, here was someone kind of walking the walk and talking the talk and in a way that I hadn't seen anywhere else. And it wasn't really about the fitness side of it, although that was an important element. It was about something more holistic, for lack of a better word, of like, this body is yours and your lack of ability to do what you want with it is a hindrance, right? And I can, and like his methodology, his work can teach you how to be better at it. And like, that's for sure what I got out of it. And now, I don't have to guess, like we see it with our students. Like that's what's really what I like is it works. I don't feel like I have to sacrifice any ounce of my morals to teach this stuff to people. Cause I really truly believe in it. Cause it worked for me. Like I ski raced at a high level, but any other thing that was sport related, I was terrible at. It was not coordinated. I wasn't agile, wasn't fast. I wasn't confident. Like those things were like so far out of my comfort zone. So, and this changed it for me in my 20s too. Like not even like, like young, but not that young. And then again, seeing it do that for our students, which, their ages are like 9 to, 60s and 70s, and seeing people making progress in that kind of those age ranges as well is cool.
Yeah. What do you think is the fundamental difference then between like a CrossFit culture and like I hate to movement culture, like hashtag it right now, but basically that is like what
we could talk to like our culture.
Yeah.
Too,
and you guys obviously, it sounds like, the school, the Boulder Movement Collective, which again, like, you've mentioned, I've been going a lot, and it's certainly helped me coming from the other side of the spectrum where I've always been athletic, agile. I've had like gifts. I think it has a lot to do with having an older brother and just being like, what's your youngest son's name?
Brady.
I mean, I don't know what the pickup rate or between my brother and I was 2 years. And so every time my brother was doing things, I was trying to do the same things. And that like helped me advance through like all these movement skill sets really at a rapid pace. Like I remember riding my bike around at 3 years old, just, no training wheels. I think for a lot of kids, that's like not very standard. And just a lot of things, I was just ahead of the curve because I was working with my brother constantly.
Yeah. And
so for me, going into, actually I had done lots of damage because I was able to use my body in ways that I was so athletic in some ways, but not necessarily, I didn't have the knowledge and like the understanding of really what my body needs and what it's doing until I ran into injuries and stuff. And I think that's been really what has been most beneficial for me going to the BMC is understanding things for the first time, or at a much deeper level. There's lots of things I learned through parkour and through any other discipline I've done, but this one has taught me, it removes a lot of the noise because it's that generalist approach. Like you said, it's about just doing whatever you can with just the body, which again, it's similar to parkour that way, but it's less about interacting with the environment and more just focused on your own locomotion.
For us, we see it has layers. So like, I mean, to kind of answer your first question, how is it different than the CrossFit work is like, first of all, there are really great CrossFit facilities out there who teach what they teach really well.
Yeah.
But I think their growth was unsustainable to maintain that. And so outside of just honestly where most people end up is just whatever's closest to them or like they're closest to their work. So it's a little bit of a crapshoot. With us and working with Ido, and one thing I really respect Ido a lot for is that he's really trying to limit how and where this grows so he can maintain as much of the quality as possible. Because at the end of the day, what I think we do best is we teach. And we just happen to teach this work. And it might look like things that people have done before. Like definitely people see what we do and think we do kind of like something like CrossFit because maybe they'll see us lifting weights, or they see us doing handstands so they think we're doing gymnastics, or they see us doing precision jumps and they think we're doing parkour.
Or calisthenics, right? Yeah, any of these other disciplines. Like,
and the answer is, to be honest, is like, yeah, it's kind of all of those pieces together. No one from a high level parkour practice would look at us and be like, oh, they do parkour, right? No high level gymnast would see me on the rings and think that I'm a gymnast, nor should they. Yeah. But we have, like you said, like this general capability in a lot of these different fields. So yeah, like you should be able to move your body in space. Like this is what parkour is great at, is like moving your body around through the elements, through space, having that kind of control. I should be able to manipulate objects. I should be able to juggle tennis balls and maybe snatch a barbell or lift some weight. I should be able to have the ability to create physically, like, through some sort of dance, right? Or follow some rhythm. I should be able to fight. Should be able to deal with another human being and that kind of physical contact. Like that's a big realm of different practices, and we try to take the pieces from disciplines that have existed for decades or centuries, and the tools that really work, that we see the proof, that's what we want to use.
Yeah, it's the anti-specialization, right? So it's like, what do they use? Like the tools are sorry, is there something?
No, I was.
The tools that these other things are creating are usually aimed at producing a very specialized, like, get better at parkour, get better at fighting, at dancing, at gymnastics, like doing these things that ultimately require dedication in one direction. And that's the reverse, I feel like, is what, I mean, at least Ido's approach has always been like, have the biggest, broadest scope without going necessarily insanely deep in any one of them.
And sort of like piggybacking off of what Zach said, it's like we extrapolate. I like that word. We extrapolate out of something like out of judo. It's like, what can we learn from judo? I don't want to do judo necessarily, but like off rhythm or off timing and all these things. Like there's so many interesting elements that you can take from disciplines, like from parkour, there's so many great things to take about moving your body with the environment. But without us going and just doing 100,000 hours of parkour, how do we take out those really nice elements and then be able to have those kind of like in our pocket to use them in other scenarios too?
If I could ask, even what do you, if anything, have you really liked or pulled out of parkour in particular?
The biggest thing that for me has been spending time on the rails. And what's nice for us is just like, as a regular person, like getting up on the rail, like I was fucking freaked out standing up on the rail, like the one's
above head height. Yeah.
Like there's that, we stood at the one on Foothills Community, out west.
Yeah.
Like
there's like the playground.
Yeah, and that's what like
they're like a little bit higher than waist height.
Yeah, a little bit higher, and just to stand up on
anywhere
that
where you can rack yourself, that's where it starts to get scary.
Yeah,
and doing and doing like precision jumps to that, and jumping up on rails, like. I have like a great highlight reel of me wrecking myself on there. Like, and I'm not afraid of jumping. Yeah. But jumping to a rail was a completely different thing.
I'm afraid of falling.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like what he said, for me, the big thing I think parkour does really has a really interesting take on that I don't see a lot of other places is fear management. Like, and what Matt said, like being scared of it. Like I have a weird thing of heights.
Yeah.
In that, like he said, like standing on these rails, like those ones, I feel like I could jump off of that, so it didn't scare me. But like in Berlin, we were standing on those rails. They were probably 11 or 12 feet high, right? And it's like, I know I can land and probably be fine. But of course, in your mind, you're creating every worst case scenario. Like, I'm going to fall, I'm going to rack myself, then I'll hit my head on this rail on the way down, and then I'll like land on my cervical spine. You find out how creative you can actually be. And
I forgot about dying.
Yeah, I forgot about the dying.
But not
slowly.
fast. Yeah.
Slow.
You'll like bleed
agonizing.
out, and then like something will fall on you that is poke your eye out.
But on the other hand, like, and again, this goes to like our fears and emotions making no sense. Like I've skied off of 75-foot, 100-foot cliffs.
Damn, son.
But and it was scary, but I'm like the again, but like that just shows how specialized it was in skiing. And now it just goes to me standing in some sneakers on a railing, and I'm like literally shaking so hard I can't move. So
sorry, keep going.
No, it's helped me. It's helped me a lot. That's I think the biggest thing. Obviously, there's the balance, there's the agility, the spatial awareness. I appreciate and I like, and like, I mean, I remember watching those I think it was like France 24 interviews like early like
that's a Yamakasi is what we call those guys, like them founders.
Yeah. So I remember watching those and going out with my friend and trying that and like smacking my head on a railing and being like, nope, like done.
Yeah.
Parkour was cool for 12 minutes we tried it.
Yeah. No. And that.
But again, like having the elements that are really important broken down and being able to attack them in a manageable pace, because when I started this stuff I was at that point probably already like 26, 27. Like I don't want to fall on the ground and see if I'll recover. I'd rather just avoid that altogether. So being able to test my limits in this kind of safe and controlled way was really interesting. And that's where I see a lot of value in parkour.
Word. Yeah, it's interesting that you guys say that, because I mean, I think about this stuff all the time, obviously, but like I think that is one. It's definitely one of the, if not one of the, it may be the largest pillar of what keeps the sport interesting. And it's weird because there's always like this clash, at least in as far as I've experienced. Like some people are obviously not into that; they don't want to take it to height, but it's always also been a part. Like the Yamakasi were doing these things at height since the inception of the discipline, basically, and because of that, it's kind of been ingrained in the culture as like this relationship with fear. And, even today, a lot of the biggest and the most parkour things you can do often have to do with height, and often have to do with not just doing something, but doing it at a level where you're showcasing your comfort with fear. And not necessarily just showcasing your comfort with jumping.
A good friend of ours, this guy, Marcello,
Palazzo. Sorry for saying it like that. Sorry, Marcello. Allora.
He's doing a lot of work into fear management. I think he's even getting his PhD.
He's getting a master's in exercise science.
But this is his thesis is going to be on like fear, and he's doing some really cool stuff. Kind of in this regard, what you're talking about height, but he's talking about is like taking a risk for the sake of taking risk isn't worth it. It has to be this calculated, measured thing all the time. Like he's not like, you know, like these Russians climbing like construction cranes and like hanging by one finger and taking selfies. You know, like it's not that. He seems to have this like this way that he's starting to break this kind of fear management or risk analysis thing down in a much more calculated way, and like that's what's interesting to me. Mm-hmm. Like doing crazy shit for the sake of doing crazy shit, like you know, that's
the crane thing is we used to call it Goshwa. Like my friend Dylan made up this acronym: getting on high shit, hanging, standing, walking around. Goshwa. Because like it's like this faux display of comfort with fear, even though to the untrained eye it's like, whoa, he's crazy, but it's actually one of the most simple things you can do, just to hang from a bar. Like obviously you guys hang all the time in the gym, so that's why it became like this.
Yeah, do you guys is it
like discipline because it's not at least it's not the same blend of
like
it's
if
not
they
a
were
parkour
doing
technique.
Precision jumps up there, that
then
would
all
be
of a sudden
different.
becomes parkour. But yeah, the fact that you're like not actually combining any movement skill with fear, you're just doing. It's really easy to I guess there's a blurred line in some ways, like just walking is in a way parkour. If you're walking around and walking on a high balance beam, it might showcase like your comfort up there, but because the Russians became like there was such a huge thing about it, it was like that's its own thing now.
Yeah,
it can't be that because I don't know.
Do you respect that?
It depends the way it's being done. Honestly, like I don't. It's just tough. Like respect is like maybe not the word I would use. I don't like respect it, but I don't really like look down on it either. Like I've enjoyed.
It's just different.
I think it's just different, and like in some ways it is the same. It's just it's weird if that. Like I've done a crane climb myself, or actually just I think 2 or 3, and you know, but for me, once I'd done it once, I was like, all right, it's kind of been there, done that. And for me, like parkour is more about seeking the next challenge and seeing where, you know, I knew I was comfortable up there. I kind of like displayed my comfort for myself by going up there and doing a hang even, you know. But it didn't, you know, to keep doing, repeating that over and over, it doesn't show any kind of growth in my opinion. It's definitely
we feel the same thing in our practice quite a bit. So we refer to as like check the box, like don't get addicted.
Yeah, exactly.
It's something really important. And like again, you can see both sides of that in parkour. Like you have someone who's really good at precision jumps and they keep pushing precision jumps further and further.
Yeah.
And maybe like they'll never do something that really scares them and challenges them. Yeah. And then same with us, like, you know, hand balancing definitely became like a meme within our community. And it was funny because you saw that for a while, a lot of places referring to themselves as like movement training facilities. And it really was kind of like HIIT workouts, like, you know, CrossFit style workouts plus handstands. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, we do movement now. So for us, like, I mean, we definitely think like something like a handstand or even like something like precision jumps, like Titus is working on those, and I know he's been working with you for a while, like one of our longer term students and one of our teachers now. He's got this great jumping ability. He, you know, so for us it's important to ask him, you know, at a certain point to point out to him, someone like him, like, do you need more jump? Do you need a further precision jump? Is that worth more of your time and investment? Or does it make more sense to focus on something that you're less comfortable with? Yeah. Because that's the growth. That's for us, that's what's going to keep this type of practice, this movement practice interesting is not getting addicted to any one thing, not feeling, again, like just comfortable all the time. It's nice to have. I still like balancing on my hands.
But we killed it though. We literally, like, I don't do it anymore. I do it to maintain it so I can teach it. But literally,
when was the last time you did like a handstand session?
Months, you know?
Oh, wow, yeah.
And it's like, it's weird because we did at least an hour a day.
For 7 days a week for years.
Well, the passion is from the growth, like you're saying, almost for a lot of people. Or at least that maybe is like what is the only way to keep your addiction sustainable is by being addicted to the learning and not to
it's the process.
But we could have kept learning with it. It just was one of those things. It was like we had to sit down, and Ido helped us with this too, and just being like, what's it really getting us? Mm-hmm. When I like have terrible like acrobatics, like, and I have a one-arm handstand, but I'm like have a shitty bridge and can't do really good acrobatics, is it really worth 10 hours a week of this one isolated thing that's not really helping me in anything else except for being on my hand in a handstand? It's not helping my acrobatics.
Yeah.
Like being upside down. And
and unless you're making your career out of that or something, maybe it doesn't really make sense.
If Cirque du Soleil is paying us to balance on our hands, maybe that equation changes. But again, like a hand balancer, like a good circus hand balancer would look at us as pretty low level.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, of course.
We can hold, usually cold, we can hold 10-second one-arm handstands on each arm. But again, someone high level would look at that and be like, it's bullshit. But again, you look at like, in arm balancing world, like these people have like purposely have very lean lower bodies. Like they don't want to have mass on their legs because it hinders their handstand ability. So like, okay, am I willing to sacrifice my ability to jump or run or kick because I want to balance on my hands? And for us, the answer is turning out to be no. It's like, it's not worth that.
But we had to take it there. Yeah. Like, because 5 years ago, I might have said, yeah, let's do it. Let's chop off my thigh, like too much weight. Yeah. And now it's like, you have to take things far enough to be able to say it's not worth it.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Not for everyone, but for
where do you think, because some people, you have to specialize to go far in some ways with something. Yeah. But like you said, I think it's a constant revisiting of this. What's it really mean to you?
Yeah.
Because,
and what's it worth?
Are you a paid athlete? Or do you have a dream to be like this one thing? Or if not, I think like this, like you said, it can be really hindering to just force yourself to.
That's what I think for me. That's what took the luster away from CrossFit. Mm-hmm. Is it became about like people started pushing themselves so hard they started destroying their bodies, and for what? To compete in like a regional competition, to compete in a competition between your gym and another gym, mm-hmm. and you're making the same sacrifices to your body that someone who might win a ton of money and have sponsorships is doing. Like, that didn't make sense to me. Yeah. And again, it's because it fits into the cultural narrative that people have with the rest of our athletics in this country, which is like, baseball, football. Like, look, like kids in high school are getting serious brain injuries.
Yeah.
No, not in high school, elementary school.
Getting
serious brain injuries. How many of these, what's the percentage of football players who go from college to the NFL?
I think in baseball, it's like 97% of people don't make it.
It's
football. Let's call it even.
It's probably
99.
No, I heard. Baseball is as competitive as I don't know who does.
Let's say
it's hard.
Let's
just say
I just heard that on NPR.
Even if it's 10%, right? Let's see. Even if it's 10%, okay. So you just did permanent damage to your body and brain, and for what? Like to like you might get a lot of enjoyment playing that in a college level or in high school level, but then are you going to be broken the rest of your life? And that's one thing I really didn't want to be. And I saw that with my dad, from his martial arts and his climbing work, at this thing of like, that old injury, and I can't say that won't happen to me, but I'm definitely actively trying to make sure that doesn't. And what you said about specialization, like, yeah, to be, and Ido says this really well, to be a generalist, you have to specialize, mm-hmm. right? For us to be comfortable enough on our hands, we spent several years, multiple hours a day on our hands doing hand balancing. But the difference is knowing when to say, like, to really cut it.
Yeah.
And be like, all right, we're done. And that goes, I'd say most of that, especially early on, went with having a really great teacher or someone to kind of step in and say, like, enough is enough. For me, the strength stuff was what came much more natural. I got really strong really fast, and getting to a point where it would have been really satisfying to add more and more to it. But like, do I need 3 one-arm chin-ups? No. Like, it's really unnecessary. And like what Matt said is like, is it worth your time? Is it worth the capital that goes into it? All of the stuff that you have to say no to in order to achieve one more of those things one more chin up, one more second in a handstand. Is that worth it when, especially like the two of us had this in common, like really lousy spine mobility.
Yeah.
Like couldn't do a bridge, and our acrobatics weren't great.
Extrapolates, I think, into our lives even, like I think this concept is something that we're kind of battling with right now. Just, for me, this came up last episode, is just you're encouraged and you're in some ways expected to become successful at one thing, right? You're supposed to, and that might be, a career path or whatever. But what that can do is potentially drive you beyond that point, that desire to be in this domain of or this rarefied air of anything, like a great programmer, a great whatever. You might be making compromises that ultimately destroy your body or destroy your other parts of your life. I mean, it's just a weird balance, because I'm just like, even with people that CEOs, they put 70-hour weeks in, 80-hour weeks in. If that's you, I guess that's you. But for a lot of people, that sacrifice is going to destroy their relationships, personal relationships, their relationship, their family, their body's probably not doing much if they're working 70 hours a week. There's all these other factors that go with it. And,
the generalist thing is it's not an appreciated, like even politically, like politicians should probably be more generalist. Like being a lawyer doesn't mean you're going to be a good politician.
Yeah. No.
Like go do have like at least 3 different jobs before you go run for political office. I don't think we need to talk politics, but it's like, it's something where you're totally right by that. Like it's, I'm not doing this for respect. I don't really care if anyone respects me. I enjoy it, but it is an interesting thing. I've never really thought about it. Like people respect the master of that one thing, and it's, there's a lot of sacrifice that comes with that. A lot.
There's the think about there's the allure of like the almost like the handyman, like the guy who can kind of like fix anything.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, jack of all trades. Like, and what was it? It's like the Renaissance man. Like, can you do that? Now we often talk about that purely in like a kind of like a like sense of intelligence, like, oh, he's an artist and a philosopher and so on and so forth. But But I mean, I guess like there's like some, the ancient kind of like, especially more Asian cultures, like the warrior philosopher or the warrior artist, things like that. I don't know. Like it's interesting. It was interesting to come here right when Matt had his first son and like see him having his second and see. I don't think there's any mistake that like you're a great father and you're a great teacher at the facility and a great business owner because you've learned to manage that stuff. Like again, we don't consider ourselves a hand balancing school, but we produce, probably on a monthly basis, a handful of 30 to 60 second freestanding handstands. Like it's so regular for us, but it's not our focus. And I think one of the reasons I like teaching the handstand is because it teaches process, because it takes this thing that seems, at least for some people, especially in the beginning, completely unattainable. And it gives you really simple, concrete steps that are based around just doing the work, in all honesty, that get you there. And I think maybe it was with you, Matt, we were talking about like, it was with one of my students. He was talking about procrastination. And he said, I think procrastination is, has to do with people getting overwhelmed. And I completely agree. Like a big part, I think for me growing up, I had like a lot of anxiety. I procrastinated a lot on work. And it was because of that thing of like, I have all this stuff to do, not even knowing like where to start. And, spending 7 or 5 years to get a one-arm handstand, spending 5 years to get a one-arm handstand, it's like, okay, like I worked for 5 years on something like really minute, not a degree, not finishing school, not a career, but like just like one skill. Like that was the value in it for me. And now it's like with these big things come up, like running this facility is like a lot of work, and managing the other teachers and our students and personalities and all this like amazing, interesting, complex stuff that goes into having a community like this. It's like, there's times when it gets overwhelming. At the end of the day, it's like, okay, the next step is just the next step. Right? And the same with the training. So that's one thing that's I think is really cool, and that's why like it's one of the reasons I don't consider what we do just fitness work. Like we're teaching, we're using the physicality as a way to teach, but you can learn a lot of other stuff through this. And it doesn't like this happened. The same thing, by the way, is like for people in like their 40s and 50s and 60s. Like I think you can still have those lessons come through even at those ages as well.
Yeah, that's like kind of that's what they say. You die when you're not doing that, right? Or that's how people fall off, is when they just they like quit their job or something, and then they'll die a year or months later because purpose. It's interesting that like the specialization can teach you kind of the process in some ways, but also by applying it to more things, like you're way more well-rounded probably.
Well, yeah, because I
mean, I'm just fascinated with this idea because, like you said, we revere the master of the one thing. Why? I don't know why that is necessarily.
Yeah,
still,
it's it's romantic.
It's romantic to think
the
like
man who goes to the mountain and becomes like a master, like bladesmith, and creates like it's like there's romanticism in that. Someone who sacrifices everything in their life to achieve this one thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's bad. Like, it's like if you're an athlete and you want to go to the Olympics for whatever and you work your ass off for it and that's what you want to do, great.
Yep.
But I think the mistake that a lot of people make is looking at that as the only way to achieve any type of progress. Right.
Yeah.
And so again, like in the fitness world, who a lot of times people look at these people, like I'm going to look at an ultra marathon runner so they can teach me about being like, in shape. Maybe that person isn't actually the best person to look at for that.
Do you want that ultra marathon bod?
Yeah, exactly.
Probably don't.
I'm good with that.
You slender man? Maybe you want it. But if you're not,
no, but it's true. But like people don't even make that realization. And when I was in CrossFit, I heard this all the time. Well, I'm getting kind of chubby. I think I'm gonna run more. And I'm like, go look. I'm like, show him a picture of a sprinter, and then I show him a picture of like an ultra runner. Like, who would you like to look like? And very rarely do they choose ultra runner. Yeah. But again, it's a disconnect. And in terms of what you were saying, like, well, why do we revere the specialists, or why do we like how we have to work? We have to specialize in certain things to make this progress, is because the opposite side of that is overgeneralization, which you just won't get better at anything. Like if I do a
little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
10 minutes at a time. That's the ADHD life.
Well, I think we all did that probably in like high school when you like you went to the gym when you're like 16.
Oh yeah,
a lot of shrugs,
a lot of bench, and then you like get on the elliptical for 5 minutes, and you're like, oh, this is boring.
I had that same routine.
And you did the lat pull down machine.
Oh yeah, that's dope.
Yep.
You gotta get those lats. I didn't know what they were, but I had to get them. To pull them down.
To pull them off, pull them down.
That is fascinating.
But thank God for specialists. Like without them, we don't have,
the knowledge.
We don't have it at all. It's just we need that. We need to be able to. I don't want to say steal it, because it's not like we're stealing, but we want to be able to pull from them, right? Like we just went to jujitsu. We're learning from one of the best grapplers in the world. Like was a phenomenal. This is Amal Easton, has like a pretty legit resume of fighting, and then now has been teaching for a long time. The guy opened in 98, so that's 20 years, right? I mean, if we were just doing this off of the internet, what we would be, or just let's learn how to grapple at BMC, like we would be, what a waste of time. So go to the people who can teach you, and then again, like what are the common concepts that you need? And like that's sort of the way we're looking at it.
Yeah.
But but specialists help us a ton. Like you
like having the parkour.
No offense, specialist.
How dare you?
Specialist scumbag.
How dare you call me that, man? I'm a Renaissance man.
Renaissance
master
mover.
of many. Jack of all trades, master of all of them.
Rail balancing and microphones.
Yeah, man. I'm a podcast extraordinaire. Whatever. I'm just that it's I agree. Yeah, I think it's cool. Like you said, like the sacrifice too that it takes is romantic, and it helps you just maybe
I mean, who doesn't want to be the best?
Who doesn't want to be the best?
Right? Like that's like everyone.
It's a gamble, right? In a way, that's why it's so great, because if you make all that sacrifice and then you end up in second place,
Ricky Bobby.
It's a tough pill to swallow, but at least you went for it, you know? What is it, Ricky Bobby?
You ain't first or last, you know?
Yeah, DC. Sorry, DC.
Sorry.
DC, you're a real champion now. Sorry,
DC, we love you.
Yeah. We got a big, I mean, I'm actually rooting for DC. I'm always rooting for DC.
You're a big DC fan.
I'm a big DC fan.
He's a big guy.
Big man, big family man.
Makes me very happy.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a great story. He's one of this more generalist. Like if you look at the scope of his life, he's one of the people that I admire for that reason. He's got balance, you know, because a specialist maybe doesn't have balance in their life. Whereas he came in second place at the Olympics and the national championships in wrestling, I think, or he had he didn't actually get his dream until he was near 40 and finally got a legitimate, undisputable UFC title championship, or became the best in the world. Yeah. And is now ranked pound for pound.
That's what I assume. That's what kept him going until now. You know, like most guys would definitely have retired. If you're winning all the time, you're like, what's the point?
It's like it's the hunger, right?
Look
at
John
Pacquiao.
Jones.
You become a rich senator.
Yeah.
And you know, you don't maybe have the same drive as you did when you were living, you know, hand to mouth. And same with like Connor. I mean, a lot of those guys, right?
But like just like John Jones, like why? What's the point?
Yeah.
Like he was so good that then he just had to like figure out a way to make it harder on himself almost. You know, like
exactly.
That's weird. That's a tough one. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist.
No, I don't either. I think that's like, at least if there's one thing to take from it though, is like what I'm taking right now is if you're not that person, if you're like, damn, if you want to be that romantic person, take some romance in the fact that you might just be setting yourself up for that more grand story, like DC's. You know, you'll have to develop in these other areas, and it's building character to the point where, if and when you do achieve that one thing you're seeking, now not only do you have that, but you have all these other great things going on for you. Whereas,
again, it's the process, the
process,
journey, if you will. To working towards,
and you don't have to hit a pregnant lady with your car and break her wrist to feel like your life is balanced.
Yeah, that's not it. But it's also nowadays, not to sound cheesy, but it's like, this is one of those things of, I feel like the more you can take yourself in this general perspective and feel like, you know, there's a lot of times I feel really uncoordinated or really bad at things. And it's sort of one of these things you're just like, it's a good way to stay humble a little bit. And there's not a lot of people out there who are working on being a good person and staying humble. There's a lot of assholeness, excuse my language. And it's
no excuse necessary.
Said so far.
Yeah, I'm just but it's
I think it's actually as wholeness.
As whole.
It's on
emphasis.
the second.
Okay.
Yeah, that's better.
Syllable.
It's PG. But it's also something I've taken out of it more. It was like I always wanted this as like a physical thing, and I was so super pumped on the physicality, and then I realized like there's a lot of really nice things you can take out of it, and you can create a good culture and community around being nice, being a helpful person, and raising up the average of the people. Like getting somebody like Zach, or me, who wasn't a super athlete, comfortable in your own skin. Like you can walk around the streets and just be like, okay, cool. I'm walking without falling right now. Like it's a nice thing to kind of give people a little bit more confidence. I'm sure like parkour and martial arts, they obviously do a ton of that as well. And I think that's something that tends to be forgotten.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about it a lot more because I'm realizing more like as a dad, and then kind of feel like we're like the fathers of this big group of people that we're working with. Like it's important that we're reminding people that also part of it is just like being able to be like a good part of the culture of a community, and like of the greater of like Colorado. And that's just like
the other day I saw one of our newer
extrapolate.
I saw one of our newer students helping a brand new student, and it was like that was the most heartwarming moment. It's like awesome. Like that person now has enough confidence. Like they've been with us for 3 months, not super long, but they have enough confidence to take someone new kind of by the hand and help them out. And yeah, that's cool. And this is, I think, someone who never would have done that in anything else. Would have like gone out of their way to help someone else. But because of the empathy that I think is inherently built in these types of practices, like when you eat shit in parkour and you see someone else eat shit, you're like, oh, like I know exactly what that feels like. You know what I mean? And when you fail at something,
not me personally.
No, not you. You've never fallen. Except for that one time.
I just can't remember because of all the concussions. Shit.
But it's you can't help but build some sort of empathy if you work so hard at something, and then you see someone else in the middle of that process struggling. Like there's inherently something that's going to drive you to go out them and then like share some knowledge. And again, like that's Matt said, like thank God for the specialists. Thank God for collective knowledge. You know, you imagine every generation we have to figure everything out again. We wouldn't be talking into microphones, broadcasting this over the internet, sitting in a heated home. We'd be bashing each other over the head with rocks.
Which does sound fun.
I'd be running over the hills. I think you guys might have. I mean, I don't know jiu-jitsu yet, so I'd have to.
Pretty bad.
If you run, we're pretty bad. If you ran, you'd have me. I don't think.
I'd rely on my speed and the boiled down evolution.
Look, but we can throw a rock pretty far.
That's true.
And occasionally accurately.
All right.
Naked.
Let's go to war, boys, gentlemen.
I was a little league baseball pitcher, so
so I'm getting hit right in the back of the dome. And you're saying
now,
he was in his 20s, but the rest of the kids were little.
It's not funny. It's true.
I love that, and I really think that's something that is inherent and observable in your guys' community, and something that I've tried to bring at least more into my own life, and hopefully more into the community, that I'm more involved in than you guys, at least in the parkour community. Because you have a richer just development of I don't know, because we're all kids for the most part, so like all the people that got into parkour were just kind of wild boys and girls, like, and we figured out, again, we specialize in this one area, but now it's time to again pull from these other disciplines, and one of them is just being a good leader, a good communicator, and providing that sense of community and encouraging people to be nice to each other. And I don't know, it can be tough with a lot of young men in the community, a lot of testosterone, a lot of.
It reminds me a lot of skateboarding.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's accurate?
And there's this weird tension because a lot of people don't want it to be that way. They want it to be a little bit more
its own
mature
thing.
and its own thing and have its own culture, but because it attracts young adolescent males, a lot of them, like, that's just like, I don't know the statistics obviously on it, but it is something that like that high energy channeling, wanting to channel your whatever. If you're a puberty hormone blasting teenage boy, then you're like, this is something I can do that feels like appropriate to do with the energy, because it's explosive, it's ballistic, it's and it can be, and it's aggressive, and and that's, again, and that's something we have to try to balance out. I think ultimately in our community, it takes a little more effort, concerted effort on our part to make sure we're creating some kind of opposing force to that drive.
So can I ask you something?
Yeah, sure.
Me?
And then I'm not to say that skateboarding isn't a good thing either.
Skateboarding is great. I think Jerry Seinfeld said it the best. He's like, you watch a kid on a skateboard, falling over, every 5 minutes, and that's someone who's going to go somewhere with their life.
Exactly.
Like someone willing to try that hard at something. And that's the same thing with parkour.
Mm-hmm.
Like you see these videos and like people do these like crazy things and they fail, and I'd be like, okay, I'd be going home. Yeah. And then it's like 6 more of the fall, and then they get 1.
Yeah.
And same with like snowboarding and skiing, like all this kind of rail stuff. It's like, it's
exactly that.
It's crazy the amount of persistence that's in there.
Oh yeah, and that's why personally, like, I have less investment in trying to. I think it's great because I like the community you have, and I think it's something I'd like to have more of as I get older, for sure. Because that's just like what happens as you mature.
Like you've been hanging out with us for probably like a year now, right?
Yeah,
like
just about that. Yeah,
we've been going steady for a year. Yeah, October.
When are you gonna? If you could just kind of bring something over from parkour to us and vice versa, something from us to the parkour community, like what do you think those trades would be? What would you like to see?
Let's see here. From parkour to you guys, let me think here. It's maybe the this, I don't know. I think like we're maybe sillier in some ways. Like we have a lot of goofiness. It depends like where we're training. You guys are actually really up on that too, though. I think it's kind of hard. There's definitely similarities. Maybe like Here's what I was about to say, actually, is, and this is why I was going to say I'm not less so invested in changing the communities, because I don't think any one of these things, like specializing in parkour, is going to teach you a certain set of skills. And you can try to change the sport so it teaches you all the sets of skills, or you can just kind of like know that parkour teaches you that. And then if you want to learn the other stuff, go over here to learn the other stuff. Does that make sense? So like the ballistic energy and the persistence in skateboarding and stuff like that, it'll teach you young men how to really just grind towards something and, not back down and not get discouraged or whatever. Maybe skateboarding is not the best thing for teaching ethics and stuff like this, like, and do we have to make it that way? I mean, I think again, like the generalist trying to make it more well-rounded would be good. And so for parkour, like, I think the mental aspect, like maybe, falling, I think maybe is one thing that would be good in some ways. We practice falling a lot in our classes. You guys do a really good job of that, but also some of the handstand work, for example. I'm like, if everyone just could learn the pivot, they wouldn't be so worried about going over their hands, you know? And I mean, but again, I'm not really there to compare parkour and what you guys do.
I kind of meant more like almost in a cultural way.
In a cultural way? Oh, God.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no. Well, I think let me. No, this is good. I need to be put on the spot. I think your sense of community is something we could bring over more, whereas like we still have a little bit of that macho, like elitist kind of stuff going on sometimes, and it's not reinforced by the community as a whole in parkour, but just because it's more of a spectacle, it just kind of like comes out. Because the people, when you do something extreme, it becomes more known and talked about, and you guys have a little bit more, it's less showboating and less like about what you can do and about just the process and stuff. So, but sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, and like one reason I think that is I ended up in the beginning, like number one, I wanted to start this school because I wanted to train with other people. And like didn't really have a group of people to do this with. But what I realize now, and why like I think it's so important with the community thing, is when you get people who walk in the door, you're like, I don't know if I want to train with this person. They kind of look like they might not be so good. And then next thing you know, like they actually have a lot to offer you. And like it happened actually recently, a couple of weeks ago, where we had an older guy, John, who's like 65, come in, and he played basketball his whole life. And so all this footwork stuff that we were doing, like, so I saw like people didn't want to pick him. And I was kind of like almost wanted to like turn the lights off and just lock and walk out, but I didn't. And the person who ended up like, quote, getting stuck with him ended up having like a phenomenal game. Because we were doing like a footwork game. Yeah. And all of a sudden it was like, and they were like, fuck, like, look at this. Like, I'm actually learning a lot. And then you realize you're like, how am I like a 30-year-old guy not going up and trying to introduce myself to this guy who's 65 who has double the amount of life experience, and then I'm sure it compounds, right? So it's like you start going through these things and you're like, you very quickly realize that you have to be willing to just go up and meet new people or work with someone you want to, because 9 times out of 10 you actually are kind of blown away that you didn't give them that opportunity. And you always realize, like I realized like with a guy like Marcello, I didn't know he was as like, I think he's an amazing guy and a parkour practitioner, like doing really interesting stuff. And then with his fear management, like first few years I knew him, I was like, he was like a friend of mine. Yeah. And then I realized what he was doing and I was like, oh my God, like
he's on another level,
this guy. Yeah. So it's just one of these things where you're like, that's what kind of helped me with this building of the community, is just realizing like everybody has things to offer, even if you don't want to accept that. And it helped me to realize like, oh, like I'm going to go work with this person because like I definitely could learn something. And I think that just comes with working with a lot of different people and realizing like it's just time to stop like judging a book by its cover. That's the easiest way to put it. But
I think the practice lends itself to that a little bit more, and that's one of the things I really like about it, is like it can get you, in parkour, it's like if you want to go do some big roof jumps, it's not even safe to bring the beginners up there, or like people that are maybe 70 and haven't like done stuff, you know? So if you want to indulge those interests, you need to find other people like you, like you're saying. It's tough. And I don't, you know, I think again, it's just, I'd rather almost just celebrate the things that are, I think it's awesome that they are different.
Yeah, of course.
You know,
yeah,
like
for sure.
it'd be cool if you guys had more that in there, maybe, I guess. I don't know, like not really, but I don't like begrudge parkour for that. I think parkour is just a little bit younger spirit in crowd, and it's a little less mature in some ways. But that's fine. Like it's a young sport.
Yeah.
It's living through that phase, and I wouldn't try to like rush it along.
Exactly what it needs to be.
Yeah,
Jiu-jitsu
exactly.
is exactly what it needs to be. Olympic weightlifting is exactly what it needs to be. That's, I mean, that's cool.
Well, and I'm trying to, in a weird way, like I'm almost, you know, this is what I'm interested in, right? Is like having more weird conversations like about this stuff. And, you know, I'm not trying to say that I'm representative of the parkour community, but obviously for me, parkour went in this direction where I wanted to talk to other people about not just movement or just parkour, but bigger concepts like this. And, you know, I don't know if that has anything to do with the parkour culture ultimately, but it doesn't have nothing to do with it.
It can't hurt it.
I mean, yeah, it's just like, I think as people are getting older, people are going to express themselves in lots of different ways. We're seeing that with people like, what's his name again? The Italian dude? Marcello. Like, again, Marcello. Like, he's got a very different style actually to what a lot of us in the community would even recognize as.
I think 9 times out of 10 someone might watch one. Not 9 times, but I think you know, if I'm scrolling through Instagram videos and I see one of Marcello's, I think to maybe the average kind of person, it wouldn't look as impressive as someone doing some crazy roof gap.
Yeah,
but maybe to someone like you who has this kind of experience of like oh wow, like the quality like that he's
it's a different hybridization, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's putting creativity and intellect and physicality in just this very different mixture than the roof jump.
Yeah.
And a very different mixture than a handstand practice.
Yeah.
It's like, it's all got elements of each, but it's different recipes.
Yeah, he's made it his own. That's what's cool. I mean, that's interesting to me, is seeing people bring their kind of individualized kind of personalities into their specialties. Like, that's fun to watch. In grappling, like in fighting, you know, it's what keeps things interesting for sure. And even in parkour, like you can see a lot of it. Also, it's interesting to watch like the first few generations get older. Like, you know, that deficit drop's not going to last you into your 30s or 40s, probably.
What do you mean by deficit drop? I'm sorry.
Depth drop, sorry.
Oh,
like
depth drop.
Jumping off a 2-story building.
The height drop. Yeah. The name of the show is Height Drop because of that, basically. It's just almost poking fun at this idea because it became a joke within the community. Like, how unsustainable for one moment can you be, taking the most amount of impact over the least amount of time?
Yeah. It's so that's what I'm really curious to see. The handful of folks, guys and girls, who stick with this into like legit middle age. Yeah. That's what I'm really excited to see. Yeah. And I think, I mean, we've already seen with like kind of what did you call the OG?
Yamakasi.
Like
the Yamakasi, baby.
Like, how many of them are still practicing at the level that they were 10 or 15 years ago, in terms of like risk? I don't know if it's the same.
I think everyone's practice changes, over the course of their life. Like, certainly mine has changed already. Just entering this era where I started to study things, and like I was learning more about my body. I realized, I actually lack a lot of strength that I thought I had. Yeah, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it today.
Yeah, I was utilizing my mobility or flexibility or just youthful energy to recover from. Yeah, what is it?
Will.
Yeah, will. I had good willpower.
Yeah,
like the skateboarder. You know, I could get back up and just keep going even when my knee was screaming at me, "No more, please, no more." And I was just young enough to be like, I can wait a day and the pain goes away, and And I've had to adjust for sure the way I'm doing things. And, I don't know that I'll never return to the way I used to practice because I'll have a more informed viewpoint now. But it's exciting to see that some of the Yamakasi dudes, like Seb Foucault, Sebastian, he was out here, and he's not doing maybe the exact same stuff he was doing back in the day, but he can still take a big drop if he wants to on occasion and take some impact. And he says he feels really good, but he's really tuned in as well to when he's going to push past that line and doesn't push past it.
Yeah.
And it's a fine sensitivity. And he's one of the few, and it's harder for him to figure that out than it will be for me, because by the time I get to his age, not only have I learned about everything that everyone that came before me, but even when I was first learning, I was exposed to things that helped keep me in check a little bit more than what he was doing, where he was like, you're literally in the dark as to what your body is capable of when you're first doing your first generation parkour athlete.
Yeah. And that's that's an interesting thing that we have to deal with, is like this research mode of like, all right, so what do we want to teach like a year from now? And I was saying to these guys, I was working on some stuff dealing with like a lot of movements coming in and out of like headstands, so like a lot of stuff that would look like a wrestler's warm up. And I was doing this thing, and it was starting to feel good. It was just like hopping from a headstand to a bridge on my head back and forth, like a very typical wrestler's warm up. And I started doing circles and started doing it like on the side of my head just to see like how it felt. And so one day I did like 100 reps of it, and I was like, all right, cool, like no big deal, meaning like I'm laying on the side of my head, putting pressure on my neck like that. And I was like, but my neck is pretty strong, and also like for some like pretty flexible and stable. So I was like, all right, well, if my neck is strong and these guys are going to do maybe 50 reps, then 100 reps is probably not enough. So the next day, or like 2 days later, I did 500 reps, and I woke up and I was like totally screwed in my neck. But at least like I went far enough to realize like, okay, I'm not going to do this with the students.
Yeah.
But that's part of it, is like figuring out like, what the hell can people handle? What can your body handle? What's the longevity of this whole practice? Because hopefully we're doing this stuff forever. Like, I don't want to have another, like this is my passion when it comes to anything other than like my family. It's like being outdoors, my movement practice, and my family. And that's like it. I mean, I don't know if you have time for anything else, but it's,
you get 3 things.
Yeah. 3 things.
Maybe 4 if you're,
I'm cool with 3, like but I'm really hope, and based on how I feel now, and the tools that we're acquiring to deal with things like injuries when they come up, like I really think we can be doing this for a long, long time. And part of that is that holistic approach, like Zach was saying. It's like, we're not just doing go heavy all the time, jump as far as you can all the time. It's like, let's do some expression work, meaning like let's dance, like more dance stuff, and dance still can destroy you too.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But it's just like, where do we find the balance? Like how do we deal with these injuries? How do we deal with our joints? And also like we're getting smarter.
Yeah.
Like I think we're actually getting smarter. We've done enough of these dumb 500 thing neck rolls,
height drops,
proverbial
height drops.
Yeah, exactly. Like you realize like that was too much, and luckily I don't have to share that with the 200 students.
When it becomes fun to participate and find the line in a way too, right?
Yeah,
it's fun. In a way, you gift that to the community by pushing it beyond.
Yeah,
and it's a great story.
Yeah, and we have a lot of tools to help bring us back.
Yeah,
from some of that stuff. Like we got really into jiu-jitsu, and my hips and low back took a beating because of it. And it kind of freaked me out in the beginning, and then I remember like, oh yeah, like I have tools. All the tool set that I need. I have all the little bits and pieces. I just need to do the work. And it took a few weeks, a few months, but it's like, okay, I feel good again. Like I feel back to where I was. And now I learned something about how hard I can push when I grapple, and how much I can't just rely on like what I had built before. I have to maybe do a little bit more maintenance work in between.
Yep.
When I do something really heavy like jiu-jitsu, and then I'm surprised when I can't like sit in the splits anymore. Like
or also the thing, like a big one for Zack in jiu-jitsu, because like he did it his first competition, and we were training together a little bit, and it's like this thing of like learning how to settle to relax.
Oh, yeah,
because everyone
yeah.
gets into jiu-jitsu in the beginning and it's like very heavy and hard and
energy management.
Yeah, and that's a big one is like, how do I chill out? And how do I just maintain positions and not be such a meathead, which everyone in the beginning is, because you use your strength.
Yeah.
And then you realize like, oh shit, it's just like everything else, like I just need to learn like basic angles, leverage, and not just doing a one-arm chin-up on another person. Like climbing is another easy way to think about that.
Yeah.
You're not, the strength that we're developing from a gymnastics standpoint is helpful for sure, but climbing is a footwork game. But as a beginner, you're like pulling yourself up the whole time. That works when you're bouldering on a V1, right? It doesn't work in any other scenario.
Once.
Like I love the best was this. I don't know if I ever told you this, but a couple winters ago we were climbing at the spot, and Titus did a one-arm chin-up.
He did like 3. He did like 3 one-arm chin-ups to get to the top of this route.
And everybody booed him.
Boo.
Like the whole gym started booing. And it was such a
rough crowd at the spot.
Yeah, but it's also like, it's because
no
it's
technique.
No technique.
Just pure display of strength.
Check it out.
Check me out.
And that's fine, right? And it's good. Look, I think it's important to have a one-arm chin-up. If you're somebody who has... if you're capable of building up to that strength. I don't think everyone needs it, but it's a good thing to build up to. And it definitely helps with a lot of things. Like I know in jiu-jitsu, it helps people trying to get our arms for arm bars. Like, I'm just going to keep my arm right here. But then the smart people just use a very simple little adjustment of the leverage and they get it. Yeah, I know. And so there's a lot of, like we were talking earlier.
I'm fascinated by jiu-jitsu. I can't wait to get started with that.
It's fascinating. It's a grappling. We've done some wrestling as well, but the grappling arts or whatever you want to call them are super interesting.
Because I feel like it's one of the final frontiers. If there was a 3-sided coin, parkour kind of shows you interact with the environment, go away from things, or and then this more generalist movement thing that you guys often are teaching in your school is kind of like figure out how to move your body by itself, and dance is kind of like that, and to an extent a lot of disciplines are like that, gymnastics. And then grappling is like, how do you deal with the other thing that's more complex than anything else in the world, another human being?
This will like, Ido said this. Every sport devolves into what at some point? Like every time you go play 3-on-3 and someone fouls you, what happens? It's a fight.
It's a fight.
That's and all sport is a proxy for fighting. And when that proxy doesn't match up to what you expect in that moment, those fights tend to break out. And so like what a really great pure representation of physicality is, it's combat. And I'm not saying martial arts because I think that's something different. I'm talking about an actual fight.
Yeah.
You can call it like even maybe, UFC, but maybe some people would say like, I think Steve Morris would say that's not enough because they end those fights. As opposed to the fights ending.
The ending of their own volition.
Yeah, so...
unless it was UFC 229, which continued.
Start a new fight.
Yeah.
End one fight, start a new fight.
Have you seen the team MMA fights out of Russia?
Oh yeah,
like 6-on-6.
Is it what does they call it? It's not sambo, but it is sambo, right? Like
no, it's just like
it's
chaotic.
It's like a
6-on-6 MMA.
It's like in an arena that kind of looks like it'd be sick for parkour. Actually,
it's really interesting because what happens is like it turns into like so it's like I think it's like 6-on-6. So it starts as like very quickly like 6 individual fights. In the course of about a minute or two, it becomes like 5 guys beating the crap out of one. It's and of course it's like only the Russians would think of this madness.
And then they hang from a crane.
And then they hang from cranes. That's how they sell it.
And then they hang from cranes. See, the Russians are specializing in gnarliness.
That's right.
And listen, we got to appreciate them.
They're legit.
It's fucking cold up there. There's not a lot to do.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, like it's like exactly what we're saying. It's like it's another element of this stuff. And the thing is like working against a puzzle that is a non-cooperative body, like another body that is that is also trying to simulate murder on you, changes everything, because all of your plans go away. Yeah. And we see this, you see this in jiu-jitsu every day. Like, you train, you're like, cool, I'm going to get the best triangle all the time. And then you go against, one other person, and they don't even have to be that great. They're just trying to stop you from doing what you're doing. And now your triangle is useless.
Yeah.
And so there's something so interesting and deep about it. And then, you'll roll with these higher level belts, these guys and girls who you're not even ever in control. And I don't mean that they're forcing you around. It's that you think you have an opportunity, and they've laid this perfect trap for you. They see it's the chessboard. They see 3-4 moves ahead. You walk right into their trap, and the next thing you know, you're tapping out because you didn't even see it coming. It's really interesting, and it's fun, and it hurts.
Yeah,
it's like,
I'm a little worried about my joints, but I know that if you have the right training partners, you'd probably be okay.
That's the difficulty. Like, I love it, but that's always the difficulty, is like making sure that you're working with somebody who
understands how not to hurt you.
How about this?
While also trying to hurt you.
If you come out of like the parkour world, or if you have a movement background and you know how to move your own body in space, then theoretically you should be a decent beginner partner. Yeah. The difficulty is most people go into it without any background in it, and it is scary.
The most dangerous thing is another white belt.
Yeah.
So that's how I got a concussion a couple of months ago from a white belt. Matt's totally right. When a lot of people, because not saying that you shouldn't try it out if it's something that interests you, but a lot of people, it's like most of the rest of their life is family and desk, and then they go 2 hours a week to grapple, and you're their training bag, and accidents happen even with really high level, shit happens. It's a no activity that I think is worth any of your time is 100% safe. Right.
Agreed.
And I'm sure you feel that in parkour as well. Like, I don't know if you ever had someone come and be like, I just really don't want to get hurt. It's like, okay, you're not in the right place. And I will never say that to someone who walks into our training facility. Like, we will make every effort to make sure that you're going to be safe and that risk is minimized. But if you expect to be in any activity that is going to provide any physical, emotional, or cognitive development, and you want zero risk, I think you're delusional.
Yeah.
So that risk exists with jiu-jitsu, but there's definitely things you can do to mitigate it. Like, Matt was lucky, or I was lucky, because Matt had started doing one-on-one training with at the time a brown belt. He's now a professor, a black belt at Easton. But that was a great way to start. Is like, it really wasn't this thing of like one teacher trying to manage 20 people. It was the two of us and our teacher Shay, and it definitely kept me interested, I think, long enough to really commit to it. Whereas I think if I had just gone to classes, I think I would have.
The same thing would happen in parkour, where beginners, there's hilarious famous clips of these free runners in Gaza, and they're called like the Gaza PKFR, right? Gaza free running, and it's again it goes with the culture, and again it's like a Russian thing where there's just like, it's not that it's cold, but it's life is cheap a little bit. It's cheaper out there potentially, or at least it feels that way if you're growing up out there. I don't know. I've never been there, but it's not exactly the blind leading a blind, but it's like people that don't really have that brown belt or that black belt, just like all encouraging each other to like just go harder with it. And they're sending like double and triple flips off of buildings that no one should ever jump off of ever. And just landing sometimes flat on their face. It's amazing that there aren't more clips of them all breaking their necks.
It's a tougher culture.
It's tougher out there. And it's hard not to enjoy the videos they put out too, because ultimately they're doing it anyways. Yeah. Might as well. I still look at it like, I'm a fan of the UFC. I know you guys are as well. It's just, and it's not that I'm against people sacrificing their body for any other for motives that are personal to them, but sometimes people do like really struggle to enjoy, or they'll shit on those guys. They'll like to like, oh, you're giving the sport a bad name. I'm like, It's
they're
just
doing it.
They're just they're out, baby. It's not going to last very well. It's kind of a self-correcting system.
Well, yeah, the feedback is instant. I'm sure. I know parkour is the same way, and the jiu-jitsu is. If you fail, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas if I fail like a dance sequence, unless I have a teacher over, standing over and being like no and pushing me, it's like the feedback is less instant. Or if I'm doing some like internal work or some softer work, you maybe don't get that. And I don't think it's necessary for every element of a practice, but when you're getting choked or when your face makes contact with pavement, like you can't blame anyone else.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's like
that floor got in my way.
That's what's good about a lot of these martial arts or combat. I mean, even just all martial arts, I think that's something they have in common is this relationship with responsibility, and just being like, all right,
and it's hard for people.
Yeah, and it'll humble you in one way or another.
Yeah, it'll test your ego. You're looking at yourself clear in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one else to blame. And I think, again, like I haven't like my experience in kind of parkour related activities is very small.
Yeah,
I'm going to talk more about jiu-jitsu because I know
for sure
I have more experience with that. But like, especially in jiu-jitsu, especially when it is a fight, and when someone puts you in a position where they can choke you to the point where you pass out, there is something so visceral about that, because if this was not a controlled setting, if this was a fight for my life, that's it. I lost.
Yeah.
And that evolutionary part of you, that like non-rational part, just gets pissed.
Oh yeah.
And then it kind of bumps up against your ego, and it's like that. Learning to manage that is very different than like I fell out of a handstand. Although I definitely got pissed when I fall out of handstands, but like,
yeah,
that was a totally different thing.
It's not built in literally to this, from
survival,
from decades of survival. Yeah, because when you pick a challenge in parkour, it's kind of like you're picking a fight with something, but it's not in the same scale. It's like somewhere in between maybe the handstand and the, even in the handstand, it's just like you're setting yourself a goal. You're picking a fight with this goal in some way. You're like, I can do this. I can beat said opponent, which is maybe just a jump to a rail.
Yeah, or you.
But or you. Yeah. But if you miscalculate, it's not as visceral like you're saying in a lot of sports, but with jiu-jitsu or combat sports,
I saw that there's a video of Kira when jumping, doing that gap, I think on Pearl Street, those buildings.
Oh yeah.
And like, listen, if she missed that, it's not gonna
could be
go
game
well.
over.
But again, like I know she understands the risk and her abilities as well. But like, I don't think it's that different from having someone strangle you.
For sure. Well, yeah, and like you're not wrong. I would say it's just that most people, by the time they take it to height, they've already kind of developed a better sense of self and picking their right opponents. They're going for that Floyd Mayweather record. They're not going for. They don't gotta get that salty, especially at height. You're not gonna get that.
They're not 3-0.
Those losses where because you'll die. 100%.
What's funny is I heard you just saying that the visceral thing. I honestly have never thought about it like that in jiu-jitsu. I honestly can say I've never thought about it. That like, oh shit, if this wasn't
just me,
they could have just murdered me. I don't know why. Maybe because I always went into it as this thing of like, I'm just here to learn.
Mm-hmm.
But or maybe I have a weird disconnect with the past of being a human being. That's like a weird thing that I honestly, I'm like sitting here just like, wait, he's right. Like every time I've been choked, literally.
Every guy out there, you always see this thing of like, you have this mind, like you have some confrontation on the street, and you're like, oh, if that had gone to blows, I would have done this, and I would have done that.
Oh my god!
And I would have like
I hate
totally
that talk.
That I know. That I do.
You know what I mean? Like everyone has that. You have that fantasy of like, the fights. You're gonna be like Jason Bourne.
Yeah.
And then what happens? You watch.
Be like Jason Bourne.
You are like Jason Bourne.
Thank
you. Jason Bournewitz. But then if you look at any fight on YouTube between like, average people, and it's like, fights are messy. But then, as you go to jiu-jitsu and you train the stuff, you're like, yeah, okay, I got this.
Step two. Adjust hip.
Exactly. And then, someone who maybe isn't physically menacing or even like I don't know, some scary person, like it could be some 135 pound like female purple belt will just choke the shit out of you. And then it's like, and it's, you cannot hide from that. It's like totally instantaneous. It's interesting. I really like it. But I think, I don't know, without our practice and having years of that kind of like that isolated failure that was much more personal, maybe more like parkour, failing at hand balancing, failing at strength work, failing at acrobatics, failing at juggling soccer balls, I honestly don't know if I would have stayed with jiu-jitsu, and not because I don't think it's a valuable thing, and not because I don't really enjoy it, but it's like from an emotional standpoint. Like when I was doing CrossFit in my early 20s, like I was angry and I wanted to get things now. I wanted the trick to get the muscle up. I wanted the trick to get the snatch. I would fail lifts and throw a fucking tantrum like a child, and it's like, and for what? And so that's one thing I really credit what we've been doing, or what Matt and I have been doing under Ido, and what we're showing our students is like, it's okay. There's definitely worse things that could happen than you not being able to hold 30 seconds in a handstand. And at that moment, it definitely sucks.
Yeah.
But you'll just try again tomorrow.
I mean, you guys were juggling soccer balls today in class, like,
yeah.
And it's not a comfortable thing for a lot of people. It wasn't for me, but it's also like, it's just a soccer ball. But like that's so crazy what kind of emotions it can bring up in people.
Oh man.
And it's a good tool. That's why like some of these things are so potent.
Well,
it's a rail in parkour. It's like there's rails everywhere. Go do it. Like you have no excuse. It doesn't cost any money.
Free entry, baby.
Go learn.
I think it often comes down to if you identify with that arena as being your domain too. If you feel the visceralness or not. Like maybe you go in there and again you're like, I'm here to learn. And, I volunteered to get in this grappling match with this guy. That doesn't necessarily mean that on the streets, he would have ever gotten this close to me. I don't know if you don't even need to rationalize it. Yeah. I just I'd be out of there, or who knows? Or
best defenses at 200
I'd have my whip out my knife or something. I'm a savage. Who knows what you
mean? Cut yourself with your own knife.
God, start bleeding everywhere.
And then the person you were fighting is like, "Do you want me to take you to the ER?"
Yeah. He's Canadian. He says he's sorry for scaring you. You just feel like an ass. But I think for me, like with parkour and stuff, because when I'm at, it's easier for me when I'm in the BMC to feel that relief of and embrace that failure. Because I haven't put my identity into the practice so much. I came in very much as a student and having kind of already built a process and understood a process.
Yeah, you have a practice underneath your belt. Like you're not.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Man, you're not like most people.
Well, no, I know I'm not. I'm fucking special, guys.
No, but not many people push that hard in certain sports. But again, you're not like most people because like we have other high level and professional athletes who come and they're so used to being the best that then when they're new at something, it's been maybe 10 years since they've been bad. And it's it rubs against their ego a little bit. And like that, I mean, that's what I felt in jiu-jitsu. It's like, someone be choking me and I'd be like, as I'm blacking out, I'd be like, but I can do a one-arm handstand. If you can't. Or, or like I did an ultra run when I was doing a lot of CrossFit and, all these great runners pass me and they clearly see me and they're like, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
Yeah.
It's totally wrong shoes on. And I wasn't wearing nipple tape either. But they'd pass me, and in my head, I'd be like, I can deadlift so much more than you. It didn't help me at that moment.
It's weird how that comes out, though. I've had that too.
It's so odd, man. It's like, it's unstoppable.
Yeah.
The ego will always be screaming in your ear that either you're not good enough or you're better than.
That's actually a really good point. It's always going to be there. It's just whether or not you listen to it.
Yeah.
And how do you shut it up? That's maybe for another day. But that's like actually something that we've been super interested in the last few years that we don't really talk about that much.
No.
But it's like that internal practice of the stillness work or like people would refer to it more like as a meditation thing. But that's an interesting one. That's I think been very helpful.
Yeah.
On a lot of ways, but at the same time, just like a lot of other elements, like in parkour or like in what we're doing, it's like, how do you really know? Like what are you judging yourself against? And you're like, am I getting better or am I like how do you know? You know, and so it's an interesting thing. That's one of the weird things with all of these things in general. Like, yes, you can win a parkour competition, and yes, we can help people win a competition in another field or something like that. But in general, it's like, how do you know if you're getting better? Like, you as somebody who's realizing, shit, like I'm getting a little bit older, I can't be doing the same insane stuff I was doing. So then you sit there and you're like, but then am I getting better? Right? So there's this weird thing that that's why I think the sitting work and the stillness work is very important, because you can actually at least have time, you can reflect on it at least, and you can ask those questions of yourself, because that's been the hardest thing for, I think, the majority of us, to be like, what am I really doing this for? I understand, like, yes, I want to be a more generalist, movement practitioner, but in reality, it's like, where am I really going with all of this? Because at a certain point, and this is like where I keep coming back to with our students having these conversations, is like, am I doing this just for the physical thing? Or am I doing this because I'm trying to create like a better, I'm trying to create a better person out of all these people that are around us? Or these are the like really the things that I'm really focusing on. And Zach and I have this conversation like for hours. It's like, what are we really doing it for?
Yeah,
I know. And like, how do you get people to realize these things about them? And is it like the movement practice or whatever it is your practice is, that's just a metaphor for the rest of it? Not to sound cheesy, but it's just sort of where my brain keeps going.
I'm the same way. Yeah, it's like,
you can't separate them.
No,
you are the things that you do, and those things relate to your life, like, or relate to other aspects of your life. But I should also have the ability to separate those things. Like, if I'm a lumberjack and I'm cutting down fucking trees all day, and then I go home to my wife, maybe she needs some soft loving and not some lumberjack loving. Right? It's this thing, I have to separate the two. But to say that one doesn't have a relationship to the other is, I think it's ignorant, for lack of a better word. Like, you go to, anybody who's had a shitty job knows this.
Oh yeah.
You go home from a shitty job, and it's not like you don't leave that job there. You take it home, and it affects the people around you, maybe your kids, maybe your partner, maybe your friendships and stuff like that. You can't separate it. And like Matt said, like, a lot of what we're doing now is trying to understand those relationships from a physical and an emotional and a cognitive kind of relationship. And the stillness practice is like another kind of layer in that almost it feels inevitable at this point. It's like this onion, it seems like it has to be the next piece. And it's hard. I think it's the hardest thing we're doing right now. It's the hardest thing for our students. It's the hardest thing for me personally. Like, when I realize, I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to sit still for 45 minutes now. Like, this is my plan today. If someone came over and was like, hey, do you want to do,
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah. You want to move this couch into my house and then move it immediately out? I'll be like, let's do that.
Yeah.
But your door's really narrow. Cool.
It's a funny thing to share it with people too. Like, we're not into, like, we're not doing, there's a few people that are sitting with us on a daily basis, that are doing the longer, because at the end of class we're doing, like today we did some shaking, but in general we want to try to have people sitting or standing for like 10 minutes. I try to give people that time, or to work on their breathing. But like, it's a weird thing to share that. You're not, like, you learn how to do precision jumps. You're like, okay, I can break this down and teach you how to blah, blah, blah. This thing, you're like, wow. Like, it's intense. It's intense because I feel so self-conscious about it in general. Like,
just being still?
No, just teaching. Like, am I good enough to share this experience with other people? Because it's like, I don't even know how to.
There's also,
is it intimate? You're like, bro, I don't even, it's a weird thing, like, we're not, because we're new to it. It's only been a few years for us. And there's people out there who've dedicated their lives to doing it. So we try to keep it simple, where we're like, here's the task for today. How about we'll just stay still for 5 minutes. See if you can, like, just don't swallow the saliva that's going to get stuck in the back of your throat. And like, if the fly lands on your face, just don't swat it. Like, that's the goal. And like, keeping it simple.
Yeah.
But it's a tough one to like I've shared it with some of our close students, some of the work that our teacher Duty Malka has shared with us, and it's like an intense thing to share with people.
It's super hard to do. I mean, I think I've had the most struggle with that too. Like some of the stuff that I've done with you guys is the stillness has been absolutely the thing that I can't do the best. Like I'm way behind in terms of being in a place where I could tell someone like, here's how you do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can barely do it for the 5 minutes even.
Even if I'm on my back. Actually probably the easiest part. Sit still. That's the how. Easiest in terms of conveying the message. Yeah. Why I think is even harder. Yeah. And I think why is harder because from a cultural standpoint, it's hippy dippy. It's really funny because like, I mean, and I was this way for a long time of like, you know, you hear about like, you know, Dalai Lama meditates and Steve Jobs would meditate and all these really successful, and they talk about how important it was for them. But part of it was just, it was so stuck in this kind of like this faux spiritual thing for me that made me uncomfortable that it kind of pushed me away. Mm-hmm. And then I don't even think Ido didn't even, when we started doing it with him and Duty, it was just kind of the thing of like, okay, try this now. Sit and don't move.
For like 2 years.
Yeah, for like 2 years we did this. And it was never a discussion of anything else until like this summer. He kind of was like, okay, here's what I want you to kind of start to work on next. And the whys started to come out. So the how, I think, is a really tough barrier in the beginning that is sitting there, not moving, but it's worth trying. And honestly, like, none of us have it.
What is your like why in your best words, if you can try to approach it?
It doesn't exist anywhere else in most of our lives right now. That's the main why, I think, for most people, is because every other instant of my life, my attention is being sucked into my phone, which I've checked several times in this podcast. I'm so sorry. Or
how dare you?
How dare you? Or then listening to the news, or maybe I'm cooking like, you know, dinner, but my train of thought is at the facility. What am I going to teach tomorrow? Stuff like that is like, you know, like when was the last time you sat and ate and you weren't watching TV, you weren't reading the news, you weren't on the internet, you weren't listening to music, just sat and did that task only.
Or talking to another person.
Right? And like, again, like and as everything's saying is like not checking the phone, but so past that, it's like, okay, we have this movement practice. We're talking about being this kind of high level of physicality, this moving around, stuff like that. But having this negative space to place that movement in is making the movement stuff more interesting. It's also helping us out a lot. We have a student, this gal Stevie, and she's gotten so good at her hand balancing. And the other day I said, oh, well, like, you know, blah, 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 your 60-second handstand. She goes, oh, I still don't have one. I kind of always fall around like 30 or 40, and I don't know why. And I told her, I was like, you have 60 seconds. You don't have the attention span for 60 seconds. Like, and this is the thing of like, not getting attached to any train of thoughts that pull you away for a minute. That's the hardest part in a lot of the stillness, is like you sit and you're still, and then, you know, you end up thinking about like that class in third grade that you had with that mean teacher. Oh, what was her name? Da, da, da. Like, it just sucks you down that river of thoughts. And for a lot of people, for the handstand, they have all of the tools. They have all of the strength. Like, Stevie is definitely strong enough for it.
Yeah.
But what happens is she goes up there, handstand, fix. Oh, like after class, I have to go to the grocery store because I fall. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. So this is like one of the pieces that I mean. And I, again, like Matt said, we've only been doing this for like a very short time, like a few years. So I'm sure there will start to be more and more of these pieces that become obvious to us. But immediately for me right now, like that's where I'm seeing the benefit or the crossover, the correlation of the why.
Or even, it's very similar, but it's one of these things where if you're in a class, it's very easy. If the teacher's talking for 3 minutes, it's very easy to not get all 3 minutes of that.
Yeah.
And it's one of the byproducts of this practice too, is this thing of like, just stay on the task. And like in meditation or whatever, they'll say, like, most people say, focus on your breath. And it's just this thing of like, okay, I'm just going to literally feel what the breath is doing to me, or I'm just going to observe
listen,
that's
right?
going
It's
in. Yeah, whatever that means. Like,
yeah.
Like Zach sometimes will say it like, okay, like I'm talking, he'll explain it to me that he's observing the breath, but he's trying in his head not to say inhale and exhale. So it's not like he's not narrating it with words. He's just figuring out a way to listen to it and like observe it.
Yeah.
And so it's one of these things where you're just like when I'm in a class, when I'm in Zach's class, nowadays I'm able to focus on what he's saying because I've daily sit down and I'm like, here's your task, sit still and just look at your breath. And so what I'm able to do as a byproduct of that practice is to listen to somebody talk, and as opposed to like the very typical thing when you're talking with someone where I would glaze, you know,
or like start looking around,
like, all right, I got my shit.
Squirrel,
I got a thing. I'm gonna say it.
Yeah,
well, let's just wait till he's done now, and then I get to say it.
And that's like a really tough thing for I think a lot of us. And I would assume it's only going to get worse based on how we're communicating through technology.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good practice for practically. I think it's a very good practice for being able to pay attention to what people are saying, to be able to be like present in what you're doing and to appreciate it. Like a couple of years ago, I would have been sitting on the couch right now, just being like, okay, so like I'm going to go, my training is going to be, Brandon's saying something. Okay. But I have to train at 5:00. So but like now it's like, cool. I'm enjoying myself. I'm here. Like all of these things that when I'm sitting that I get used to doing of like relaxing my abs so I can feel my breathing a little bit more. Like I've been doing that stuff. And that's just my observation of it. As someone who's a beginner in that's a byproduct. I don't think that's the goal.
Yeah.
But those are just the things that we can speak to. And that's why I think it's such a tough thing to share with people.
Yeah.
Because it's like, this word surrender is like a huge word in yoga and in meditation. And I can't bring myself to saying it when I'm explaining what we're going to be doing. Like I just can't, it's not,
like, if
I'm
Matt
not
said that, I'd be like, that's not Matt's voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things like I don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
That's not my voice right now. And like hopefully in a few years that will be. I just cannot say surrender. Like I just can't do it. It's just not me, and it's not my experience with that.
It would be false. And it wouldn't be real. It wouldn't be true. It's like the same, you don't want to go and learn hand balancing from someone who can't do a handstand.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The walk, talk the talk thing is important, I think. And I think it's interesting that it's all coming up. Like it's making me remember that that's kind of what I've been taking. I ran into these injuries, and with parkour, this is like something this is why it's so hard for me. Is I was able to run literally and figuratively with this parkour career for a long time, and my attention was never tested. I never needed to endure stillness on a scale that I have now, dealing with all this energy that I used to put into anytime I wanted to go do something. I just go out and start jumping around, or I'd make an Instagram, or I'd put my creative energy into something, and I can still put it into other things. I'm putting it into the podcast and stuff like this. But what this era of not being able to, no matter how much I try to do more with whatever, I realize that's what I'm here, or that's what I've needed to learn and teach myself is how do I sit and just be okay with that? Even if it's just on like this broader scale. And I think a lot of athletes in parkour are going to be going through certain things like, it's almost like a post-traumatic stress disorder kind of thing you have to deal with, a lot of people in the Army come back from the combat and then their life is so boring compared to like what it was.
Yeah, well, that's the same thing as not having a purpose then.
It's not having a purpose, right?
When you're in an organization and you're doing that type of work and you have goals every single day, all right, our goal is to achieve this.
Yep.
Your goal within that goal is to do this and this. Like to go from that to like, I got to go to the grocery store.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Like that, it's immensely hard. And again, it's part of, I think this is a part of human psyche. Now, what a lot of us have done is just set up as many distractions as we possibly can.
Yeah.
I ride my bike to and from work, and when I ride home now it's dark and it's just TV screens on in every house. And when I lived in the Middle East, when it was dark, it was like, one, it was like kind of cool enough to go outside, but like, you go around the streets of Tel Aviv and like it'll be like 9 o'clock at night and there's like 5-year-olds playing by themselves, 6-year-olds playing by themselves, like in front of their apartment complex. So there's no parents. And there's people walking around in the street, or there's people playing chess outside, or there's still some connection to a community. And like we've separated ourselves so much from that. And it's just through distractions. It's through the phone, it's through media, stuff like that. Because it feels good and it's easy.
Because if you have all that energy, it's easier to distract yourself, like you're saying, than learn how to sit and listen. Yeah. But if you don't learn how to listen or observe or whatever, sit in that stillness, it's hard to hear that purpose surface.
Yeah.
And I can rhyme.
And it's and it's also like
surface.
There's definitely, we have some close friends who are going through some interesting things, like from an emotional standpoint. Mm-hmm. And like when we do stillness work, it's like they have to literally sit and deal with all of the bullshit that is going on in their head with depression or whatever it is, anxiety, all these things that a lot of people are dealing with. They have to deal with that for 30 straight minutes of that voice, not in the back of your head when you're sitting, it's in the front of your head, like calling you every name that you would call somebody you hate. Mm-hmm. From what that voice is calling you, all of those things, and like it's an intense thing to go through that.
I think we got a door.
Someone's at the door.
You know what? We're just gonna have
surprise guest is like Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
This is surprise. I think it's just a delivery, so I'm gonna go ahead and ignore it for now.
All right.
This is more important.
If it was the cops, it would be knocking louder in a second time, so you're good.
Yeah. Sorry for that interruption.
It's okay.
But such is.
I think you should get it.
Shit, maybe. Hey, you guys gonna hold this down for me real quick?
Yeah, we'll talk.
I'm gonna narrate.
We'll talk.
What a terrible podcast.
I gotta pee.
A guy making keys or something. It sounds like a scam to me. Let's just see his ID.
Can I pee?
Yeah. You know what? Maybe we should just wrap this up real quick.
All right.
Wrap it up, Matt. Wrap up while you pee.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up while you pee real quick. That was a
a heavy note to end on.
I mean, I don't know. Where were we at? What were you just saying?
I lost my awareness.
Oh, God damn it. We all got distracted. We're all just going to have to go sit still now for an hour and a half to get back our momentum. But that was just like the super or whatever. The guy, he's like, I need to test the key. I was like,
test it.
I mean,
he tested it. Like, I was like, you literally could have done that without even knocking.
But that would have been weird if like you're just chilling and
just heard
someone starts
the deadbolt go forward and back.
That would have been messed up.
Yeah, true. Fair enough. I mean, he should know. We're packing heat in the Maxwell, baby. HEIGHT Drop Studios.
We got a turret. Like a machete right there.
Yeah, that's from Panama.
You got someone who wants to do jiu-jitsu, a white belt and a blue belt. You better watch out.
Yeah, man.
3 guys who could definitely
I rolled with a blue belt once.
Watch out.
Got tapped.
Good scratch.
Got Kimura'd.
That'll happen.
Yeah.
You'll get Kimura'd quite a bit.
But yeah, I think that's actually kind of even though it was a weird note to end on, I think that's a really good message is this stillness work. If you can go do it or try it out, there's isolation tanks. There's lots of different ways to get into it, I think. But
honestly, sit upright for 10 minutes. That's it. Try not to move.
Yeah.
And then just do it again the next day. And it's hard, and you're gonna want to everything in your every fiber of your body is gonna scream at you to move, or like just like if I just fidget, then my butt cheek won't go numb. It's just deal with it and see what you get out of it.
Yeah,
like that's it's easy as that.
I just remember that you were on like the people dealing with the depression and the horrible voices in their head. Is there something that they have told you about afterwards? What they've taken away? Has it helped them deal with some of these things?
You know, that's an interesting one.
Like getting it out is like, at least it's gone now. It's not.
The honest truth is, I don't have a good answer, and I've heard from multiple people that it's actually
makes it worse.
Been worse, and they had to stop, and they have to go down other avenues. And this is people who are like dealing with pretty legit things, like maybe they have to go do some other. Luckily, like we live in a pretty cool place where you can work with people who can help you with with drugs or who can help you, in different ways. There's some interesting therapies that are coming out now. Every time I talk about it, people are like, yeah, that's crazy. But there's a lot of really interesting therapies going around, and I never have done any of it, so I can't speak to it. But in general, like if you're like a decently healthy person up top, I think it's a huge thing. If you're going through some pretty tough times, I don't know if it's necessarily the best avenue to go down. But I'm not a doc. I'm just speaking from the people who are close to us.
Just anecdotal.
Yeah, and it's but I agree with Zack 100%. And even Zack sits on a drummer stool that we have at the facility. Like everyone thinks they have to do all these crazy, like sit on the floor and look like Buddha or whatever. Just sit in a chair and just stay still. And it's very tough, but at the same time, it's really, the concept is so simple.
And it's just rewarding. It becomes very rewarding.
And just, can you do it? And you'll notice it. It just takes time. It's just like anything else, where one day you'll be like, oh, ooh, I noticed that. But in the beginning, you're not gonna be opening up your eyes and being like, oh, I feel enlightened. Like, it's not one of those things. But
crushed it.
You might down regulate, like you might chill out a little bit,
Yeah.
But it just is. It's more important to be consistent with just trying to get 5 or 10 minutes a day than it is to try to, be like, okay, I'm gonna do an hour every Saturday.
A good friend of ours, a really smart guy, he really was like wanted to get into meditation, so he basically meditated like the entire day. He didn't eat. Like, he would get up to go to the bathroom, drink some water, but then he would sit again. I was out of town, and then he went out to dinner with my girlfriend, and she was like, she even said, like, he knows it was like horrible. He didn't eat his dinner. He like couldn't hold a conversation. Like, it was Tony. He just like was just like it had just, he had gone so deep. He was just like this raw husk of a human being. And he said she saw him the next day, and he was like, I'm so sorry, I should have just canceled dinner. But he was just like, I'm gonna do it. And maybe that's not the best approach. Like, maybe like Matt said, the consistency seems to be the thing. It's just that, but that, I mean, that's hard.
Dosage, right?
Yeah.
It's balance, like,
Well, there's days where you're like, like shit, I haven't sat today. It's like 9:30. I'm gonna go to bed at 10. I go, okay, like I gotta do this. 10 minutes I'll sit and, not on the cam with your phone. But like, actually.
And you do realize that. You do notice, you're like, okay, I was just on reading the news or whatever the hell you're doing on your phone. You're like, that was 12 minutes I could have been sitting. Or like watching fucking some sitcom. You're like, did I really get anything out of watching a rerun of episode 3, season 7 of Seinfeld that I've seen 86 times? Like,
no, but it's easy and it feels good.
It feels really good.
It feels nice.
It feels really good, and it's just it's just how many hours do you have in the day? How many hours can be useful? And also cut yourself some slack every once in a while. But like, it's one of the things, especially with the kids now. I'm like, I do not have a lot of time. I do not have a lot of free time. Yeah. So every minute is precious, and it's a fun thing to try to share that with people, but it doesn't make sense until you live it,
Yeah. Last question. Who you guys got in the main event this Saturday?
2:30? Wait, 2:30. Who is
It's Derek Lewis, DC.
Wait a second. Really?
Yeah, man. See, you look at you.
He was crushing pumpkins.
You're
No, the crushing pumpkins was Ben Askren, though. Which, by the way, if anyone
you're so busy, obviously,
that,
we know that you can't pay attention to these things. You have too much to do with children.
Oh my God,
and everything.
am I that off?
But it's Derek Lewis is going to fight for the title now.
Oh my God!
Back to back, you have pay-per-views.
I have no idea.
Look, here's the deal. It's DC. It's DC. You can't. We started the podcast with DC.
Sorry, that's what.
There's no way that anybody is gonna ever beat DC again, ever.
Except John Jones.
Is John Jones? What's
John
ever
Jones
gonna happen?
Get back here until DC is already out. Probably. I'm with you.
I mean, yeah.
He's too smart.
Of course, John Jones would beat DC again, but these are hypothetical. These are hypothetical fights.
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali versus Jesus Christ on a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Who do you think would
T-Rex.
win? Just the T-Rex.
On a T-Rex. The bout takes place on a T-Rex.
The T-Rex wins.
See?
I can't believe I'm embarrassed that I didn't even know the fight was this weekend.
I'm not
Don't be
embarrassed.
embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that I do actually a little bit, and I care about it because I could be spending time balancing myself out. Sort of less UFC propaganda, more.
I have to say, I generally just watch the highlights at this point.
Yeah.
Unless it's a fight I'm really interested in.
I think I finally hit that point where I'm like, what am I really getting out of this by paying that attention to the events? I mean, I really enjoy it, but it's almost like
Joe
the handstands and everything else.
The best parts of the interviews, you know, and you get to see the juicy stuff. And like, I don't know, maybe if it's a really interesting fight, like in terms of like the styles that people are bringing, I'll watch the whole thing. But I'm a touch over investing what ends up being like
$59.99.
Yeah. That too. Well, I usually just go to your house, so I don't have to pay for it.
I watch a lot of reruns because I have the Fox Sports app.
Yeah.
And so UFC is always on, so I watch a lot of fights. But
Matt tells me which ones to watch.
Oh, nice.
He's like he does all my research for me.
But yes, I think DC is gonna win again. He's just the man. What a good guy too.
Yeah. He's a man with the ultimate story. He's a super inspiring guy.
That's what it's all about. Like that's what I hope.
He's not like a dirtbag. Like,
he's hilarious. He's like I love DC.
That's like I think if anything, if I'd like to leave anything with this world is like be a nice person, and do some inspiring things, and you know, like that's it. It's very simple.
Leave things better than the way you
That's it.
That's it, guys. You heard it here.
You heard it here.
You don't need to hear it anywhere else.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thanks, Brandon.
It was a pleasure. Obviously, welcome back whenever, and I'll see you guys very soon, I'm sure, in your classes. And on the mat, you better watch out because I'm going to be pulling guard, son.
Watch out. That's what you think. And in the first class.
And then, whatever. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandon.
Matt Bernstein, Zack Finer. All the info will be in the description to the schools and everything else. So appreciate you guys. Cheers.
Appreciate you. Thanks, man.
Whoever thought I'd be the greatest growing up?